Okay, well, hello. You saw me yesterday. I'm Maximiliano Tabacman. I'm here today with Mariano Saura. We are going to talk about stuff that we developed at Mercap about the control of the user interface. Okay, not about the MVC pattern. The name maybe suggests that, and it may have some ideas related, but this is about how to interact, about the interaction between the user, the domain model and the user interface. Okay. So a little bit about us, about Mercap. What we do is develop financial solutions, but in the meantime, as we develop the model for the financial market, we also like to develop the different tools that are useful for us, like well, other talks that we did in the previous small talks about gemstone migration and maybe code integration, automatic code integration. Maybe this talk is more related with the model, with the framework that we are actually using for the development of the application. Okay. So this is a summary of the things that we're going to talk about. Maybe first Mariano will talk more about technical or the theoretical stuff, the ideas behind the model, and some examples, and then I'll tell you about what we learned when developing this framework and the future of it.
Well, hello. We can think of every application with a graphical user interface in terms of, or divided in these two layers. Yes, the user interface object layer and the business objects layer. Among user interface objects, we have all those objects like windows, buttons, icons, frames. Yes, and business objects are all those objects that belong to the domain our application is simulating. Yes, it could be system, processes, anything, but all entities that belong to the domain of our application. Now, at some point, we need to connect objects from one layer to the other one, because, for example, we want the user to define a new business object by interacting with a window. Well, for that, we added another layer which we call the controllers or controller objects layer. Controllers will be the link between objects from user interface to business, and their main responsibility will be to create instances of business objects. Well, let me show you an example, quick example. Okay, this is our application, and let me show you a simple window. This is a window to create, the purpose of this window is to create a financial entity. Yes, a financial entity is a bank most of the times. And what our system needs to know about financial entities is its name and the calendar, a calendar which the financial entity is associated to. So, for example, if we want to create a new bank called Bank ABC, we type the name and we choose the calendar. Yes, for example, USA calendar. As you can see, we have at the top of the window a status bar. that gives feedback to the user. Yes. Or if we leave one of the fields empty, for example, it gives feedback about the error. Yes, here it says that you need to enter something in the name. And if everything is correct, it says everything entered is correct. Okay, let's see what objects were involved in that window. Among these objects, we have the name table, the window with the status bar, the buttons, and the table for the name, and the calendar combos. And on the business object layer, we have the object the window is supposed to create. In this case, the underlying model of the window is not the financial entity itself, but a user request to add that financial entity. But for now, to simplify things, let's focus on the family objects. Let's focus on the name table, the calendar combos, and as far as business objects, we are concerned about just the financial entity, with the name and the calendar. And of course, business objects need to be created, but in the case of the calendar, it is a selection. Yes, the calendar was already created, and we need to choose which of those calendars will be associated to the financial entity. And controllers are used for this purpose, for selection. Well, if we add the controller object layer, we have a controller for the name, a controller for the calendar, yes, and the name controller will have the purpose, of creating the name. The calendar controller will create the calendar, select the calendar, and we have the controller of a higher level for the financial entity. Name controller, yes, the name controller. Sorry, the financial entity controller. As you can see, there is a one-to-one relationship between controllers and business objects. But we're talking about objects here, not classes. Yes. If you're wondering, the name controller will be an instance of the text controller, and the calendar controller will be an instance of the selection controller. Yes, and the financial entity would be the controller created for the purpose of creating a financial entity, or a generic controller, which we will see later. Okay, and one more thing here. As you can see, the name controller has and the financial entity controller has a two-way knowledge relationship, yes, which is not present on the business object. This is a parent-child relationship, and I will show you why each controller needs to know each parent.
No, no. Sí, ya le cambié.
Well, I said there is a parent-child relationship between controllers, yes, and one more thing here we need to notice is that the name controller and the calendar controller know an object from the user interface world, and the financial entity just knows other controllers. It needs the model of other controllers to create its model, and basic controller need the model, or the value of the user interface object to create its model. We will refer to the name and calendar controller as basic controllers, and to the financial entity controller as composite controllers. Yes. So we have basic controllers and composite controllers. The model of basic controllers are generally the object the user interface object offers. For example, in the case of text controllers, the model will be a string, and composite controllers need a model of could be another basic or another composite controller to create its model. Yes. Well, but let's talk about the process of model creation. Here you can see the name controller, as any text controller, receives the key release event notification. Yes, because basic controllers generally subscribe to events of the user interface objects, and in this case the name controller subscribes to the key release event, and when it receives the notification it tries to create its model. Yes, in the case we analyzed, we type bank ABC, so it creates its model, which will be the string bank ABC, and it notifies its parent that he has a valid model. The parent of the name controller is the financial entity controller, and when the financial entity controller receives this message, tries to create its model. Yes, and to create this model, he needs the models of both of its child controllers. Yes, so it asks for the model to the name controller, which returns the string. Yes, and the calendar controller returns the selected element, which will be USA calendar. And at this point, the financial entity controller has all it needs to create its model. Yes, so again, it notifies its parent that he has a valid model. We found it useful to have the window as parent of the main controller of the window. Yes, for example, to update the status view. Well, this was the case where model creation is successful. Yes, let's see now how we handle the errors. Again, when we leave the name field empty, yes, we receive a key release notification, and when the text controller creates its model, in this case, text controllers typically have a parser to check if the string entered is empty or not. Yes, so if the string is empty, it notifies its parent that he has an invalid model. Yes, he doesn't have a model, and gives an error description. Yes, and the parent of the text controller forwards this message to its parent, and again we update the status view with the relevant message. Well, in the case of the text controller, I said it was a parser, the object that decides whether the model is valid or not. But on many other cases, it's an object from the business world, the object that the object that signals an exception, yes, to determine if the instance creation failed or not. Yes. For example, if we have an object, called financial unit life, yes, which represents the life, yes, the issue and maturity date of a financial unit. For example, a bond or a stock. Yes, and whenever we need to create a financial unit life, we need to check, for example, if the issue and maturity date are valid. Yes, the issue date needs to be before the maturity date. So in the instance, the class method for instance creation of financial unit life, we add an assertion, yes, to check this. And as you can see, if the assertion doesn't pass, we signal an instance creation fail exception. Yes, this is a special kind of exception that we handle during model creation. So, if the assertion passes, we get an instance of the object which will be valid, yes, and complete. And if the assertion fails, the exception is signaled and we don't get an instance of this object. Well, last year we wanted to make a prototype version, a web version of our application, and we weren't sure if the controller model was going to be useful. Yes, so we tried using it. And let me show you very quickly the application. The same window. As you can see, this is pretty much identical to the desktop window. We enter the name, yes. Oops. Yes, and we pick the associated calendar. We kept the status bar, which gives feedback to the user, yes, and well, let's see which are the differences with the object diagram in this case. Instead of a text box for the name, we have the web equivalent, which is the text input. And instead of the calendar combo box, we have the calendar select. Yes. Of course, the business objects are the same. And but what happens with controllers? The name controller and the calendar controller need to speak to different objects that belong to the user interface. And typically, in this case, the user interface objects offer different event subscription mechanisms. Yes, so the name controller, it was a basic controller, yes? So we had to rewrite basic controllers, yes, but composite controllers were useful as they were. Yes, we didn't have to do anything with composite controllers. And well, of course, we had to write the web views and the style sheets and everything, but the controller model proved to be useful even for a web application. Yes, it was useful both for desktop and web. Well, now Maxi will we'll talk about the evolution of controllers so that we can tell you about the controllers that ended up being very useful for us.
Okay. Just a quick review of some important controllers that we developed as the model progressed. The very important one is the generic composite controller. This was used once we saw that many of the controllers that were used to create the model, like the financial entity or other objects in the domain, we realized that the controllers only created a model using the model of their children controller. So instead of duplicating all the business layer with controllers, we realized we could create, in most cases, I think 95% of the cases, it could be replaced by a generic controller that just knew which class it needed to create, what was the instance creation method, and then we just passed along the sub-controllers and it did all the job for us. Okay, some little meta-programming there, but it was really, I think it was a very good decision. It simplified all this framework for us. Another interesting controller is the dynamic model controller that is used in quite complex situations. Let me show you, because trying to talk this in a few minutes, it's difficult. Yeah. In this case, when we have a calendar, okay, calendars have rules. Have rules to define when a day is a working day or not. Okay. So, in the case of choosing the rule for the valid date and changing, you see that the contents of the window change, and the object that is created, even the class of the object being created here is different. So here we use what we are calling the dynamic model controller to help us with that decision in an elegant way in the code, so that we can then focus on writing the domain objects. Okay, and another interesting controller is the shareable controller. This was used in order to allow a controller to have more than one parent, because the parent-child relationship was intentional. Yeah, the original model was focused on every controller having only one parent, and we realized more and more that there were some cases when that was not useful. We need more than one parent to do mostly updates and notifications, so we created this shareable controller, so it says, okay, you can have more than one parent. Yeah? So it's more like an implementation detail. It's not part of the intrinsic problem of solving the user interface and the connection to the business, but it came as a necessity of our implementation. So what we've learned is, well, now we are thinking that all controllers should be shareable. In that sense, maybe the choice of having only one parent is not required. It's not an intrinsic part of the problem that we are trying to solve. Also, controller may not be the best name. I don't know how lost you got while we talk about controllers. That may be not what you thought would be. We are thinking right now that model creator is maybe the most interesting name. Also allowing for some cases where you say it's a model picker. For instance, in a case of selection, it's more like a model picker, or a date maybe. But the other thing is that they should only be used for instance creation. When we started with this framework, in many cases we used these controller objects for more things that were not, we realize now, maybe right for the model, like populating the view with the options, and that created some coupling that may not be required, and even got us some problems in the end. So another thing is that web usability is not the same as desktop usability. That's something that we've learned. We try to mimic all the application in the web, but when you do a modern web application, there are certain standards and design techniques that should be used from the beginning and were not thought that well. We just try to see if it fitted, and we said, okay, it fits, so let's use it. And now we are rethinking the web interface to be more in line with that. But some things that we learned that we did right, yeah, just not all wrong decisions. The idea of having assertions at instance creation, of only creating valid and complete objects, was really helpful. It's helpful when designing the model, but it was also really in line with the idea of these controllers or model creators that we are now going to call, and also the idea of having immutable objects. In most of the cases, you create the object, and if you change the components of the view, it's not that you are changing the model, you are creating a new model. Okay, so that really helps with the design, and everything makes sense when you have it like that. So now our future work is to continue with this rethinking of the model creation architecture. We decided that this model has some years now, so we are rethinking it. We are seeing what was if there are good choices to keep them, and review everything that may be done in a better way, maybe done in a better way. Also redesigning, obviously, as I told you, the web interface, guided by current design standards, and then seeing in which cases the controllers that we have can fit in. Okay. So that's about it. Some credits. We thank all of the developers at Mercap. We came here to tell you about this, but a lot of people participated, especially Hernan Wilkinson. So we thank him a lot for all the ideas that came into this. So now we have, I think, time for questions. Thank you. No, it's not a transition. We have the old product and the new product, and the functionality keeps like merging. We develop things in one, and what we learn then we pass to the other, but the basic architecture of the two systems is quite different. They are both done in Smalltalk, but the old system does not use this. The client is different, the technology for the client, for the communication, for the storage, it's completely different. So, okay.
I think you're talking about the desktop version and the web version, right?
No, mi 3 y X3, no. Okay. The old one. Okay. Yeah.
The question is, at some point you said that for the creation of controllers you had to do some meta programming.
Yeah, for the usage of the generic composite controller depends on some meta programming, because you have to tell it when you configure it. You say, okay, you are a generic controller, or we have in fact a builder for generic controllers. It's a two-step process, and you say, okay, you say to the builder, I will need a generic composite controller to create instances of this class, sending this message, and using the model of these controllers as parameters for the creation. So it does all the same things that the old like repeated controllers did, but in a generic way, because that there was nothing more to it. In some cases that we wanted to do a slightly different thing, a very complex window, maybe we have a specialized controller. But I think 90% of the old controllers have been deleted because they were not needed, and it made the model much simpler.
Yes, it happens a lot with dates. Yes. For example, when you need to register a purchase, for example, 100 bonds or stocks, you have a field for the date. Yes, but this date is used for many things. For example, the agreement, one is the date of the trade, yes, but then you need it to check, for example, if the financial unit is alive, yes, it has to check if it hasn't expired, yes, so you need this model, yes, the date, to be used for many things.
I thought the referent was also
No. The parent of every controller is another controller. The only exception being the main controller of the window. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.